Imagine traveling to a foreign country, and shortly after arrival, you begin to feel off. You're feeling anxious and have the need to isolate yourself. You develop unusual obsessions and begin shouting Bible verses and singing loudly. You are suddenly convinced that you have an obligation to fulfill a religious mission, and then, after leaving the country, you're suddenly normal again and confused about what just occurred. This is Jerusalem Syndrome. Jerusalem Syndrome is a mysterious disorder that was first described in the 1930s by a Jerusalem psychiatrist named Heinz Hermann, although it never officially made its way into the DSM. People who experience Jerusalem Syndrome phenomenon will start to undergo a psychotic, religious-themed delusion shortly after visiting Jerusalem.
Because he told me I must come on a donkey this time, so I became the king, and I came on a donkey, and the next day I was the king.
In extreme cases, some people will believe that they are Jesus or another figure from the Bible. The condition does not seem to discriminate against religion, as it has affected Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. In many cases, the people who fall victim to this were perfectly healthy and never experienced any mental health issues beforehand. In most cases, the delusions suddenly disappear after a few weeks or immediately after leaving Jerusalem. Of all the documented cases of Jerusalem Syndrome, they are split into three categories. Category 1 consists of people who are already diagnosed with a psychotic illness before going to Jerusalem. These people tend to go to Jerusalem because their delusions have led them to believe they have a mission to accomplish. It is also this group of people that is most likely to have more extreme delusions, such as believing they are a figure from the Bible. These cases are the most easily explainable, therefore not all that interesting. Category 2 consists of people who did not necessarily have a mental illness, but they did have an excessive interest in Jerusalem. This interest could be personal, but oftentimes it's associated with a religious group they are a part of. Although interesting, because they already had an abnormal interest in Jerusalem beforehand, their delusions aren't all that strange or noteworthy. Category 3 is the smallest and most puzzling group of subjects. These are the people who had no signs of mental illness before arriving in Jerusalem, nor did they have any unusual obsession with Jerusalem. Their delusions weren't quite as extreme as the people from the first two categories. They usually don't believe they are someone else and can still properly identify themselves when asked. But there are 7 distinct stages that everyone from this category goes through. The first stage they will go through is anxiety, agitation, and tension. The next stage is a desire to split away from the group they are traveling with and tour Jerusalem alone. Many tour guides who observe this behavior may take this as a sign to try and refer the tourist to a psychiatric evaluation to prevent the later stages of this condition. The third stage is having an unusual obsession with bathing and compulsive fingernail and toe cutting. Next, people will take their white bed sheets and wear them like a toga. The fifth stage is the need to shout Bible verses and sing hymns loudly. This is the biggest sign for hotel personnel and tour guides to try and get the affected individual help before the final stage develops. The final stage people experience is that they will march to one of Jerusalem's holy places, where they will deliver a sermon. The sermon is typically disjointed and not very well prepared. In some cases, people will develop a paranoid belief that a secret agency is causing their symptoms of psychosis through drugs. Between 1980 and 1993, only 42 people were reported to be in Category 3 of Jerusalem Syndrome. An example of one of these patients was a Swiss lawyer who went on a group tour of the Middle East. They planned to spend a week in Greece, a week in Israel, and a week in Egypt. The lawyer was perfectly healthy beforehand, and their first week in Greece went totally fine. Once he went to Jerusalem, however, his symptoms began on the first night. He went through all the stages and then made a full recovery in a week. He then continued the tour in Egypt and went home in perfect condition. It's difficult to get much data on this because Category 3 subjects usually feel ashamed and don't want to talk about their experience after they have recovered. The few that do say they felt a sense of something opening up inside of them, making them feel like they had an obligation to carry out. One thing that is important to note about this is that of the 42 subjects in Category 3, 40 of them were Protestants, 1 was Catholic, and 1 was Jewish. All 40 of the Protestants came from ultra-religious families, where the Bible was read together at least once a week. Many critics believe their strong religious backgrounds could have led to a temporary delusion like this. You could even argue that they could just be grouped as an extension of Category 2. It's also interesting how only Christians and Jews were in Category 3, never any other religions or atheists. So, I think I would agree with this conclusion. I know of some people in the US who are perfectly healthy, yet have had some strange temporary religious delusions before. So, I can see how if someone were strongly religious and then experienced the culture shock of visiting Jerusalem, it could definitely be a very emotional experience for them. The only part that does puzzle me is how most of the people in Category 3 all went through the exact same stages in the same order. Furthermore, it's worth noting that this condition isn't unique to Jerusalem. There's another similar condition to this, known as Stendhal syndrome, where tourists observe art in Florence that is so beautiful they end up having a panic attack, fainting, or in extreme cases, even hallucinating. Then there's Paris syndrome, which affects tourists who go to Paris and are so disappointed by Paris not being as beautiful as they had hoped. They'll experience delusions, feelings of persecution, derealization, and anxiety. I think that traveling in and of itself can elicit some very strong emotional reactions, and in the case of Jerusalem syndrome, if paired with a hyper-religious background, could cause you to act in strange ways. What do you guys think? Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the flip side.